Hey guys, thank you guys for coming in for another episode of Indigenous podcast. We've got here Juan and our very special guest, Clearbear and Cuauhtli. They're both native too. And first off, we're going to start and ask, if you tell us a little bit about yourselves, maybe when you guys realize you're both, or maybe you, Clearbear in particular, like when you found out you were a native and finding out more about yourselves.
Hello, everybody. I'm Clearbear, and I'm an activist. And what I do for work is I'm a model for a storm model agency. And sometimes I act a little bit as well. But, my main passion is activism and, the same message you guys are saying, reclaiming and reconnecting Indigenous roots. I started my journey probably when it really started was when I was adopted. And growing up as a kid, I started coming to more, I started questioning a lot of things because I grew up, raised by non-natives, by a white, two white parents in an all-white town. And from there, I just asked questions very similar to Marcus, really. And I wasn't able to see my biological family until I was 18 years old. And, when I did, a lot of questions I had for so long were answered. But even before that, even before I even knew my tribe, I knew I was Native because, yes, my adoptive family did tell me a little bit that yes, I was Native, but again, I was faced with when I always asked to dig deeper about my identity being Native, I was met with ridicule. I was told not to be drunken Indian, not to be a wetback, and a lot of different racist things. And yeah, it drove me to learn more about it. And now I figured out I'm Kumeyaay, and I also do have Chichimeca roots as well from Guanajuato, Cuauhtli. And yeah.
What state are you from? I was just curious.
Oh, what I'm living in?
Or where did you grow up? Like, what state was it? Like Texas, or was it another state?
California, specifically the Bay Area, San Francisco.
Oh,
Okay.
San Francisco, I grew up.
Hi. Hello, everybody. My name is Cuauhtli. Well, I realized I was Native when I was very little, and my father took us to like the Los Angeles Bracito Vera, and there's a lot of Mexica dancers there, like every weekend, or it's the event plaza. It's pretty like regular throughout the whole year. So just growing up, he took me there, and I realized, he told us a little bit, just like that we're Native, but nothing much was said. Just watch the show and then just go back home, So just growing up, there wasn't much, but I had to just little by little kind of just be on my own journey, and just it wasn't really till I was older, like in my 20s, when I like in my 24 or no 26, when I finally started actually like going on Instagram and like getting really curious about decolonizing and what it is, and everything, finding out more about my background and my roots. And so that's where I'm here. I'm an activist. Sorry, I didn't say that in the beginning, but yeah, I'm an activist. I like to create things, and play flute. My background is Cora, from Mexico area, Nayarit. And I have roots in Mexica and Maya peoples as well.
That's awesome. That's really great. Mayan.
and she said Mexica, like right from that great empire. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, it is. Cleaver, I had one little quick question for you. So you grew up in the Bay Area. So you and I grew up in quite different environments. But I think you said yours was a was kind of a rural area out near the bay?
I grew up in a small town called Pacifica, and it was very, very like very white, or like a lot of people obviously were like trying to be white. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes any sense. Like they were colonized in a way that they themselves were not proud of being where they were from, whether that's being Polynesian, Filipino, Chinese, or any other background like that. So there was a lot of there's a lot of self-hate, but it was mainly just white people, if I'm to be honest with you.
I can relate to that because growing up here in Alabama, I went to school there wasn't that many natives. It was just mostly white people, and there was a significant amount of black people, but there was hardly any natives. Like I could probably count like 10, on my hands that I remember, right? So I can get the whole self-hatred thing because I went through that. Like I was ashamed of being Mexican. Like I would deny it and I would say, no, I'm American. And I would get in arguments with my parents all the time about it. But I grew out of that eventually. But it was hard also because I was a first generation immigrant and I was here illegally until I was 15. So, it was a lot of stuff there, that I had to sort through.
Yeah, kind of similar with me, growing up in a mostly, white Caucasian environment. And then I think it was in college when I realized, like, I looked up, the term Hispanic, Latino, and anyone could pretty much be a Hispanic or Latino. And I looked at, I know, right? And then I'd seen a beauty pageant of like South and Central America, and they're mostly, light-looking people, and from the U.S. standard, they're also called Hispanic and Latino too. It's like, wait a second, like, okay, something isn't connecting here. So if I've been putting myself as Hispanic this whole time, so I'm just like them, like racially or what? Like I didn't, And then finally everything started to click. What were you gonna say? I'm sorry, Clearbear.
I was just agreeing with you, like in same dilemma. When I was in high school, I think it was when I was a freshman in high school, that's when I first started to like really like ask myself, like, okay, so I'm a Hispanic. And then I just looked up Hispanic, and then I read Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
And then I was looking at that, I'm like, I look literally nothing like any of these people. They have blonde hair, blue eyes, or just they're brunette, and they look, very European. And I remember kind of like the gears started turning in my head right then and there, that okay, then this is something deeper. And then I came to the conclusion that I'm Native, and most of the people who call themselves Hispanic are Native. Not all. I know some, like there's like white Cubans, Brazilians that are like a mixture of European and black, or just black, or anyone can be any race and be a quote unquote Hispanic or Latino. Mm-hmm. But I realized that Mexico and other places, Guatemala, Belize, a lot of them are, quote unquote mestizo, and they have indigenous roots, and they've been colonized.
Definitely.
To recognize themselves, or they're ashamed of who they are. They're that part of themselves that they are Native.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I definitely think, and you were saying like not all, Hispanics or not all Mexicans are like Native. And I think that's the flack that we get, or at least I've gotten from people that have opposed like my views, is they think that I'm saying that all Mexicans are Native or all Hispanics.
Right.
Like, no.
Listen. But then their feelings get hurt because like whenever they say that, I'm just like, oh no, absolutely not. It's like you're either Native or you're white. And then they get butthurt because like they're probably white and they just
it's pretty raw, like the truth is just so like, it's just a shaker, and it just really shakes them, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. And I think also another thing is like, there's probably like an element. I know there's discrimination that we all face, especially like Mexicans, right? But I think a lot of Mexicans that are lighter are basically just white Spaniards, but they're just, they were born in Mexico. I think they don't want to acknowledge that they do have privilege. You come to the United States, they're not going to be questioned whether they're illegal. They're going to look at me and they'll question me. So, but that's not something that's talked about much either.
Exactly. Or if you're like, if you're in Spain or Spaniard. I remember in high school, there was a foreign exchange student, and he was from Spain, Mallorca, Spain. And he, I looked at him and I was like, do I look like a Spaniard to you? And And he said, no. And then I said, does Jose look like a Spaniard to you? Because I was arguing with another native guy, and he was saying, no, I'm from Spain. I'm from Italy. I'm like, does he look like he's from Spain? And no, he doesn't look like he's from Spain or Italy, because he's been to both.
Sorry.
But he was in mad denial that entire conversation. He was in mad denial, oh, whatever, completely fighting it. But we all know.
And something that's funny is we get a lot of flack from all these gatekeepers and these haters that say that don't want us to identify Native. However, I have never seen one of these gatekeepers ever try to gatekeep our people from saying that they're white. You have 21 million Hispanics that said in the last census that they were white. And it's like, where are all the gatekeepers? Where are all you're mixed motherfuckers? Like, because I don't see them. They're only here when it's us trying to reclaim our Native identity. If it's the other way around, saying that you're white, they're nowhere to be found.
It's a damn matrix, it seems like. Like, as soon as you start, the gears turn and you realize you're Native, it's like, oh, okay, fine, but you might be a Native descendant, but what about your tribe? You don't know your tribe, because a lot of us don't know our tribe because of colonization, or they just don't have the resources yet, or whatnot. And we need to, in my opinion, I believe that we need to normalize that it's okay not to have your tribe, because we are a race of people. Again, you guys constantly talk about this, and I completely agree that we are a race of people, and it's okay not to know your tribe. Do all African Americans, do they know their tribe from Africa? No, they don't, because they were colonized, and that's okay. But they have African blood. That's where they are from,
Hey, and Clearbear, what would you say to people? Because I've seen also gatekeepers. When you back in a corner, they'll say this. They'll be like, "Oh well, race is a social construct. It's not real." What would you respond to that nonsense?
Dude, I've that same thing again. The same thing I've encountered. We both encountered. When they say that race is a social construct, I just say, what do we usually say, dude? I usually say, I'm kind of drawing a blank here, but when they ask us, they usually tell us that race is a social construct, and then I usually say, how so? And then they usually explain how, oh, it's made by white people, and oh, it doesn't exist. We're all one human race.
Oh, that we're all like one race.
And then I just kind of break down the definition of what race is, right? That a group that shares the same common background, that we also share common features and other things like that. And they usually are still in denial about it, but I think it's pretty clear what a race is, that we're all from a certain area, that we all share common features, and
right.
that there's a genetic factor to it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And people like to pretend like there's no genetic factor to it, but genetics determine how you look. Like, obviously, race exists to an extent, because you take a guy from Germany, he's going to be way more likely to have white skin and blonde hair and blue eyes. And yes. I'm not going to have those features because I'm from Mexico. It's there. It's in the genetics. It's coded. So now, yes, there's not a gene that says, oh, no, you're a black person. It doesn't. Yeah, obviously not. But they affect how you look. And that's where there is race.
Exactly. I agree. And, phenotypically, you can tell. Not all the time. There's some times where you have someone who's half native, half white, or half native, half something else, and they might come out looking more like the other race, or they might look more ambiguous. But for the most part, from what I see, I can usually tell when I see another brother, sister, or relative who is indigenous, just by looking at them. You're like, oh, yeah, you're native. Cool.
Yeah. And here's my question, to all the people that criticize us is, when they say, if you're from Mexico or South America and they want to say that they're native and are indigenous, and then you've got an outsider, like a non-native person, or someone that's colonized, and say, no, you can't be native. And let's say this native person's like 80 or 70%. I'm like, okay, go tell an African-American, I'm from Illinois, go tell an African-American in East St. Louis or Chicago that they're not black. And let's see what that response will be,
From Africa and raised in a particular tribe, you're not black.
Yeah. it just seems like
You're an American. You're
it
English.
seems like it's
you speak English.
it seems like it's an anti-indigenous kind of
It's not.
attack on us when they say that, because like you say, they don't do it with other people. It's who
Yeah.
Native people. Right?
No, yeah, it is very
It's
anti-indigenous.
just anti-indigenous.
The idea that we need to have, in my opinion, the idea that we need to have a particular tribe to be valid as quote unquote valid as Native,
Yeah.
or yeah, that exact thing is just, it's very, 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 colonial narrative, very settler colonial narrative, and it's very it's just gross. It's just a gross thing,
I agree.
We need to be recognized as natives.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely agree with that. Before we talk about gatekeepers, I wanted to get a little bit on racism. Now, you're from California, so
Yeah.
I usually think that California is a pretty open, diverse place. And I know not all the parts of California are, but maybe you could give me an example or two of racism that you experienced, maybe from Native people or non-Native people, if you don't mind sharing.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So I grew up in this town called Pacifica, which is about 15 minutes away from San Francisco in the Bay Area. And growing up there, I grew up there all my life. Growing up there, I experienced racism from a lot of white people, some Native, but mainly just white. That being the fact that obviously, I'm Native, I'm brown, and they're white. So when I was a kid, sometimes the white kids would throw books at me and say, like, beaner and things like that, like beaner, wetback, go pick some oranges, just really horrible racist things like that. And yeah, and or it's even by teachers, but it's more covert. I think Malcolm X talked about the white liberal. I don't know if y'all have seen that conversation.
I've seen some videos.
Yeah, it's all over Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and he talks about how the white liberal, they pretend to be your friend, and they talk a good talk, but at the end of the day, they do not stand with you in solidarity. And I think that's something I witnessed from a lot of white people growing up in Pacifica, that they said they were cool with me. They said that they were down for what I stand for. But at the end of the day, when I talked about liberation for Native people, when I talked about decolonizing, reclaiming who we are and where we come from, there was a lot of hate when I showed that I was very openly proud and very openly, talking about it to everyone, because I started a Native American club at my high school, and then I started a Native American club in my college, and then later I just started organizing with Cuauhtli and my brother. All this same centralized idea of reconnecting, reclaiming, and revaluing your identity as a Native person. And again, there's a lot of hate from white people, a lot of hate from a lot of Catholics. We once held a ceremony with some American Indian Movement members because they joined us, and they were having a prayer, and some of them were in Wounded Knee. Have you all heard of Wounded Knee?
Yes.
Yes, the Siege of Wounded Knee. Some of them were there, and then there was a Wounded Knee veteran event, and that we came to help them out. And when we came, a bunch of Catholics, white Irish Catholics, came in. Surprisingly, they came in. They started taking the microphone. They said, "You Indians need to repent. You Natives are doing Satanism, and you guys are going to go to hell, and you guys are going to burn in hell." And they took the microphone from my sweat lodge leader, and it was just a really, really horrible experience that entire time. And it was just, yeah, that's one that I can think of on the top of my head that was very impactful to.
Yeah, sorry I had to go through that, man. I know
Yeah, man.
I've read some Irish and Native American history, and there was I think there's a potato famine in Ireland, and the Irish are really happy that, you know, Native Americans helped them out with that. So,
It was strange, you know.
yeah,
It's
that's,
like, what?
yeah, I know, right? It must have just been some small group of some rude people, but I'm glad that, I mean, you haven't had, have you dealt with any other racism recently or?
Yes, I have. Unfortunately, in Los Angeles, by some of the older Chinese community, they really, really have just a problem with like brown folks over here. Like I was recently went to go to a hotel and get a room at that hotel, obviously, and this older Chinese woman who worked there kept on profiling me and asking me why I was there. And I said to get a room. And then she said $120, and I said okay. And I put up my card and gave it to her, and then she said we only take cash. And then I said okay. Then I went down the street, went to the ATM, came back, gave her $120. She said actually it's $220. And then he said, didn't you just say it was $120? He's like, no, it's $220. I'm like, oh, well, okay, well, whatever. I just needed to really stay at a hotel that day. So I got $220 in cash. I gave it to her. And she said, you're not going to cause problems, are you? And then I said, why? Why would I cause problems? And then she said, you're not into drugs, right? You're not going to make a mess, right? And I said, why? Why would I make a mess? And then she said, you have a vibe that's, and I was, mind you, I was dressed very normal. I just was wearing a plain t-shirt. I didn't even wear anything like indigenous, like tribal or anything. It was very standard, had my hair pulled back. I was in a hoodie. And I said, what makes you think that way? And then she wouldn't answer me. And I'm like, okay, well, here's my money. Can I just get the room? And then she said, yes, fine. And then I gave her $220. And then I found out later on that there was no deposit. It wasn't $220. It was only $100. And that she was just being that way, you know? And I think it was because I was brown, honestly. I was also in a very specifically only Chinese area.
Mm.
So yeah, it was a really nasty experience. I told one of our brothers, though, a brown brother, about what I experienced, and he worked there as well. He worked at the hotel, and when I told him about what happened, his eyes were watering, and he was just really feeling it. He felt really sad. He's like, I'm so sorry, man. That's just that's awful. I have no words to tell you. And he really felt that, you know, and yeah, it was just an ugly experience of recent. What about y'all? Have you guys experienced anything racial?
I have, I mean, nowhere near that. That sounds like extremely horrible. And it's appalling that it happens at the hands of another minority.
Yeah.
That's just messed up. They're minorities too. I don't know where they think that they're superior. But yeah, I've experienced quite a bit of it here in Alabama growing up. I too, you know, wetback, beaner, all of that nonsense. Where's your green card? You got asked that all the time. And it also hurt more because it's like, okay, well, I was here illegally till I was 15. So like whenever they called me all that, I was like, well, that's the truth. I am here legally. But I would never tell them that, but it always made me extremely bitter. And so I always felt like a foreigner. I always felt like scum. I didn't have a lot of self-esteem because of that in high school. So it definitely affected me. They also called me like stupid shit like taco and all this other stuff like that. So yeah, they just called me taco. I thought it was stupid.
That's really fucked up, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one time though, like this is in high school when I got like I lifted a lot. I was really, really skinny. So that also didn't help because I also got picked on because of that. But anyways, I lifted a lot of weights for like a year and a half. So then I got kind of swole. And then like some friends started, I don't know, like they were friends, but they also sometimes would say racist shit. So they made fun of me at Sonic and they were laughing about it. And I actually got so mad, I just slammed my hand down. Like we were out in public on like the table and I was like, the next person that says anything racist to me, I'm going to beat your fucking ass. And nobody said a word. Like they just all went silent. So I was like, so.
Damn. Correct. Yeah,
what? Oh, sorry. I was gonna. What about you, Marcus? I think you were about to say something, man.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, for me, I think I brought this up before in maybe a video, like the racism that I never dealt with that much racism growing up. More so, as a kid, and maybe you could call this racism. I've actually never shared this story with anyone before. Which is when I was in kindergarten, and so with my class, and as I told you, like 99% of the kids were white, and we went to another classroom for an exploratory class, and when we all entered in, I think I was like 7 or 6, and we all entered in, and I sat, and like all the kids were all sitting at this table, these 2 tables, and there wasn't enough room for me. So I sat at this one table, by myself, and then the art teacher, the teacher, before he started the class said, okay, who wants to sit over here with this kid? And no one sat over there with me. So I was like, damn, I was like, do I really look that different? So that,
Yeah.
I think that's when I realized that, like, either I was just like a really hideous looking kid, or it was because of how I appeared.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah, man.
Shit.
But a lot of things that, have happened to me since then, from, not just, white people, but other people made me realize that there's a lot of open-minded, good people, where I was from in my city in Springfield, Pleasant Plains area. So as I said, a lot of the racism that I had was when I was younger, a much younger kid. But yeah, that was a very hard experience, realizing like that I didn't look like most of my peers. So I could have, we'll move on to that story later. I am actually curious, Cuauhtli, we didn't ask you if you've dealt with any issues, growing up regarding race.
Yeah, thank you. In Los Angeles, there's a major problem with it. I don't know if anyone, I think we don't really call it out though, because our people, Los Angeles is like full of, people from Oaxaca, Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, and they kind of are reserved and they don't complain, and they're afraid to complain. They're afraid to stand up for themselves because they're illegal. Their status is illegal, and so, but that's why people say maybe there isn't that much going on here, but it's just always been a problem here with like the Asian community doesn't get along with our people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They
unfortunately.
exploit them at work, at their businesses. They've been exploiting them since day one. They underpay them, overwork them. They just really dehumanize them, and there's a huge problem with that here. And there's like labor unions and protection that have sprung out to try to kind of control it, or kind of like combat it. But it's an ongoing issue, and like you can research it, and it's really appalling. But and the African community doesn't get along as well with our people,
Yeah,
each other. Like it's just
not as good as it could be.
we're all like kind of bumping heads here.
We got a lot of trauma. I think.
Yeah.
We have a lot of trauma from being colonized, and I'm sure y'all are familiar with the idea of intergenerational trauma.
Oh, intergenerational trauma. Yeah, I've heard of that before.
Yeah, I think that comes to play in a lot of ways because our people have a lot of sensitivity issues. We're very, of course, not all, but some of our people can be very sensitive, can be very triggered, quote unquote, problematic,
egotistical.
Yeah, self-centered. And this comes from a lot of, and I think a lot of that comes from A, intergenerational trauma, and B, this kind of like the mentality of this settler colonial state. You know what I'm saying? The idea that the idea that there's this like individual self,
individualism.
exactly, self over collective. And I know that's not all Native nations, but I know many of our peoples, Black peoples, even white peoples, Asian peoples, there was, a traditional collective mentality that we all shared. And I think that is very much, something that has been broken through the settler colonial ways. And even to a point affects us in our decolonization and reconnecting to understand who we were and where we're going. Because a lot of us don't understand that, that there was the concept of I, for some of us, is very new,
Yeah, but so I'll say going with that is like we've always had that kind of like tension, racial tension here, but so we're never have been like a united minority group in LA. Like we're just all like
yes,
fighting and stuff. But recently now, like there's a call for this unity, like have my back on Instagram that I hear, but the reality is it's not that way. Like I see so many call outs for it. Like, the Black community wants us to have their back, the Asian community wants us to have their back, but we're not actually in real life doing it,
and I think it's ironic that we're not centralized, us, because it's our land. This is our land, we should be centralized in the massive elephant in the room that is the fact that most of us are colonized in the mind to an extent that we won't reclaim and reconnect with our indigenous identity. That's horrible. That's a terrible genocide. That's a genocidal. It's ugly that most of us won't even claim that we are Native. We won't even claim our race because we think that's inferior. That's just gross, and it's disgusting. And
so I think there needs to be steps to get to the unity.
Exactly. We need to unify.
It's not like we're just got there.
and I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say it. We need to be centralized because this is our land. Because we are Native people, we need to be centralized. This is our land. We need to be the focus.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying because we're not even like visible. We're only visible when people want to have their back.
Or we're only visible when we're like Northern Natives, from the reservation, or for from the Southwest in general.
Right. So how would we have to work towards that unity? So
exactly.
For sure. And one of the main missions that me and Marcus have is we want to change, because to even get anywhere with this, we have to get people to realize they're even Native and to want to accept it, because that's what we are. And so one of our main missions is we want to change the public perception. I want it so where the average freaking Joe on the street that's uneducated or whatever, you ask him what race I am and he's going to tell you Native American instead of Hispanic. That's what I want to change.
Exactly.
That's our vision as well.
That's my, that is our vision. That is our vision as well.
Before COVID, we were doing that. We were going door to door and talking to the people here in East LA, door to door. And then COVID hit.
We were giving out pamphlets.
The next month, like COVID.
We had the caste system pictures in the pamphlets. We were discussing what they're used for and how they were tools to colonize our people, to not identifying as being Native anymore, and the whole nationalism, mestizaje, how these are tools of genocide against us. And a lot of people were really receptive.
They were receptive.
I mean, you can see it in the murals over here too in Los Angeles. You see it, you see like the classic from Indian to Chicano murals that are here. Like you see like a Native warrior in the back. Oh, now I'm a Cholo, but I'm not Native anymore. It's really ironic.
Yeah.
I'm Native, but not Native no more.
There's tons of murals here.
Crazy.
Yeah, I always thought that idea was really silly. Like the idea of a whole like a mix of two make something brand new. It's just like, no, since when? It's like it doesn't apply to any other race. They're not something brand new. Like It's only with us because we want to run away with what we are from what we really are. So
yes.
exactly, like Malcolm X, he was part white, but did you see him? He didn't have to identify as a white person, and I don't think he ever did identify as a white person ever. And he was seen and respected as a black man, a black leader. And that, same thing with Malcolm X, same thing with Muhammad Ali. I believe he was part Irish. And these things, this whole idea of blood quantum, to a certain extent, mind you, is very, very colonial. I know that some native nations do believe in blood quantum to an extent, and I do respect that. I'm not going to bash on it completely because we're all so diverse culturally. Mm-hmm. But I do think to a certain extent blood quantum is irrelevant if you're talking like, oh yeah, you might just have to be a quarter white or even half white or whatnot. I mean, like, as long as it's a substantial origin, I think it's valid for you to claim it. And plus, a lot of nations don't even have it. So again, you guys already hit this one, but some require only 25% native, or some even 1/8 or 1/16.
Yeah.
But our people, again, are well over, mainly half.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, for sure. And one thing I've always stuck with is, like, whenever people have asked me, they're like, well, what do you think is your cutoff one, like, from when somebody's not native or not? And I always tell them that, like, okay, I don't feel comfortable saying, like, making the rules here. Is like, I can tell you my opinion. My opinion is, I guess if they're like 20 to 25% or over, like, it's kind of a debate, but they might be able to do it. But my main focus is, if you are close to half, like, let's say you're 40-50, like 40% native, 50% white, it shouldn't be a question. Like, come on, you look freaking native. Like, come on.
No, I completely agree. I'm with you exactly. Like, that would exactly. I don't even need to say anything. You just hit it on the dot. What I believe. I don't know. You about the same or?
Mm-hmm. The same.
I didn't know that about Malcolm X, that he was partially European.
Yes.
I didn't either.
It's actually really sad. I think it was his mother. No, it was his grandmother who was raped by a white man.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really fucked up. And I respect him for what he did, and I think that whole idea needs to be brought towards us, because he talks about a lot of the same things. Who stripped you of your language? Who stripped you of your history? Who stripped you of, why do you look in the mirror and look down on yourself? Who taught you to hate yourself? They say I'm full of hate, but who are the orchestrators of this hate? Who made this hate? Who are the colossal haters of all of this? And he was talking about the oppressive system, the colonizers, the people who bring this into place. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to bring this re-education to our people, and I think that we got to do this through programs, re-education programs, because a lot of the institutions, at least from what I've seen a lot of the institutions, promote this idea that you need to be born and raised in an Indigenous community to be Indigenous.
Yeah, for sure.
It's to me, what I see, I've been to Sweat Lodge. I've been to many different Indigenous ceremonies, different cultures. And this idea is usually only unique, not all the time, but only specific to these institutions, like some universities. They like to create this hierarchy of what is authentically Indigenous, and it's just
they like to make the rules.
They like to make the rules for everybody, and it's just, okay, get off your high horse. You don't get to make the rules for all Native people. You're not even, who's, it's like, even for me, I can't determine the rules for a Hopi to define what a Native person is, because I'm not Hopi, you know what I'm saying? Or I'm not, I'm not Wicharika, I'm not Raramuri, Taramara. I'm not, I can't define what is Native for these specific nations because I'm not under them. I'm not with those nations.
Yeah, and I think what the other thing we wanted to cover real quick was Gatekeepers, finally get to this part because Juan and I have been really wanting to get on this part, this topic a lot. Now, Clearbear, did you say you are registered or you are not?
My father was from Baja, and we have no registry
Okay.
because I don't have no registry if we're in Mexico because we're in both sides of the border, the United States and in Mexico. My father was from Mexico, so we don't have that type of privilege.
I see. So not, sorry, you're going to say something, Juan?
Oh, no, I was nodding my head. Although, like, Clearbear, like, you know, the classic argument I hear is the whole, you're not 100%. Like that same bull crap, right? All right, so the thing is, you look like you're 100%. Have you gotten that stupid shit?
Yeah.
I got it. Yeah. Mainly from my, it's sad to say, but mainly from my adoptive father. Yeah, but you have some Spanish, so you aren't native. And I'm like, okay. And apparently, it's funny, I got him really good because he was looking through his records, right? And it turns out that his great grandfather was Lenape Indian from New Jersey, right? And I'm like, oh, look at this. I guess you aren't white anymore. I guess you aren't white anymore. And I shut him the fuck up really quick with that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very quieted down after that.
So the logic only applies, exactly, it's very anti-Indigenous. And the logic only applies to me because I'm trying to reclaim a identity that challenges the industrial, colonial, settler colonial ideals of quote unquote America. And
he's on stolen land.
And he's on stolen land. I feel like that's what a lot of it is. They're scared. A lot of white people or those who believe in that mindset. It's a fear. It's a fear of what reclaiming indigeneity represents or what it could be. A threat to industrial America, a threat to quote unquote progress, a threat to progress. When in reality it's not, and we're not naked Indians, lost Indians in the woods. We just had a special relationship with nature that wasn't ego and monetary gain over the balance of nature. We lived with it, we respected it. We were not above it. They had the domestication of land. That's the idea, to have control over. We had semi-cultivation, which was to work with it, to work with the forest, to work with the jungle, to work with the dirt, the desert. And these things are very, very, very beautiful. Our heritage is the land. Our heritage is the land. Our features mimic the geography of the land. And it's to me, it's so beautiful and sacred. And the challenge aspect, it's not challenging, it's going to just change it. It's going to flip the whole fucking thing into a really beautiful thing. We're going to connect with the natural way if we get our people to be on board, because this just opens the door. It's going to be epic, truly. And I'm excited.
Yeah. And you know what? I want to add on to that. I would like to see the people that call themselves open-minded to go tell President Barack Obama or Malcolm X that they're not black. Because they have a large, or at least Barack Obama has a large percent of European blood. And
dude, I would guess that he's like 50-50, kind of like how I am, or he's like 40 black and 50 white. But no one's questioned him. The media just said, "Oh no, he's black."
Oh no, of course, no one will question him.
Exactly, and a lot of the people that claim who claim that they are half black and half white. A lot of them are not. They're slightly more white because of the fact that a lot of black folks have trace amounts of European blood from slavery and whatnot. And again, no one questions them.
Nobody plays the 100% game with them.
That's your lived experience, brother. I'm not ever gonna sit in a position and say, you're not black. I'm sorry. That's your lived fucking experience. You present as a black person, that's who you are, man. I get it. That's part of who you are. That's your ancestors, man.
Yeah, they don't want to look racist, but apparently for us it's free game.
Yeah. Just steps forward, like,
No, yeah, I respect you guys, you're black, I get it. But hey, fuck you Indians though. No, you're not native. What are you doing? Get the fuck out of here.
yeah.
And it's just
Or even some of them say, oh, just because you look native. I was like, what?
I remember I was in Job Corps when I got out of college, and I was homeless at that time, so I had no other place to go. So I went to this program called Job Corps. They house you, you learn a trade like security, or you could learn to be a carpenter or whatnot. And I went there, and there was this man who I saw who was also a student, and I was looking at him and I was like, man, he looked like, this man looked dead ass native. Like he just, wow, right? I was like, you're native, right, brother? Right? What's up, brother? You native too, right? And I went in for the fist bump, and then he didn't give me a fist bump, and I'm like, oh, you're not native? I'm sorry, right? Because I thought I just mistook. And he's like, I'm Mexican and I have some Mayan roots, but yeah, I'm Mexican. And then I said, but Mexican isn't a race, it's a nationality. And then he said, oh, and I'm like, well, you're native, you look native, you're obviously indigenous. And he said, he just got really quiet and he looked at me, he gave me the side eye, and he was like, that was a long time ago. And then he didn't talk to me ever again after that. And we were actually friends for a while.
A long time ago. Maybe he had a flashback in his mind, like he thought he was indigenous for a long time, and then something happened, and then you said something, and it was like a 2-minute flashback in his mind. It's like, no, not anymore, or something. So
I don't know if he meant that he was native a long time ago, as if I think he was meaning his family was native a long time ago, and the mestizaje civilized them and made them something else,
Mm-hmm.
Right. That is weird. The only other interpretation I can think of is he immigrated from Mexico and he was native in Mexico, and he immigrated here and he's like, no, let me start over. I can't be native here because it's inferior.
And it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy that same idea for the Kumeyaay people in Mexico. It's like we have an epidemic of our people, Kumeyaay people, who are born, raised on the quote unquote reservation, and a lot of the young folks leave. They leave and never come back, and then they relinquish their identity for the Mexican national identity, the mestizaje, and they give it all up, and many people will be like, oh yeah, he's not native anymore, or oh yeah, she's not native anymore. But it's like, at the end of the day, you're still native. You're just in denial because you have a lot of self-hatred,
Yeah. And the Mexican government, I've talked about this, is pretty racist. Like Alejandro was explaining, to be considered indigenous by them, you have to live in the indigenous community and practice the way and live the traditional lifestyle. And if you step out of that, let's say you just move to the city, you're somehow no longer indigenous. So it's like they're saying, if you advance, if you are modern in any which way, then you're not indigenous anymore. You're something else, which is extremely racist, because the implication is that to be indigenous, you have to stay in this certain little bubble that we made for you, and that's it.
Yeah, it's gross,
and they literally will agree to that.
Yeah.
When you talk to them,
and
again, say, oh, I'm not. No.
You can be full-blooded native. I shit you not. You can be full-blooded native. There are full-bloods all over Mexico, full-blooded native. And as soon as you leave that res, and as soon as you just relinquish that identity, you magically become a Mexican mestizo, even if you have no European blood whatsoever. You could be full-blooded Mayan. Leave your area, the pueblo, and then boom, you're mestizo now.
Like a lot of farm workers.
A lot of them do that, you know, and it's crazy. A lot of in San Francisco, we have an indigenous people called the Ohlone people, right? I don't know if you have heard of them.
I haven't.
A lot of the California natives, a lot of them just changed their identity, switched it up, and called themselves Mexican. You know, the same thing that happened to Mexico happened to here for a lot of the California natives. I'm sure other places as well, but the history that because I'm California native as well, the Kumeyaay is part of what is now known as California. And a lot of our people literally just said, we're not native anymore, but they have this lineage that is Karuk, Ohlone, you know, Pomo, Miwok, these really beautiful, beautiful, sacred just identities that they just relinquished because of colonization. And they said they're Mexican. You know, it's sad. A lot of Mexicans actually find this out. You know, a lot of I remember meeting a guy who traced his roots and figured out that he was Ohlone from San Francisco. And yeah, he was just like tripping. I'm like, I'm not surprised you're native. You know, you like that.
I swear it's the media that spoon feeds a lot of, you know, natives south of the border as well, for them to want to, you know, relinquish and not ever relinquish, but just like push away any native identity that they might have. And it's the same here too. I definitely think there needs to be a change in the education system for Native Americans. No one talks about, like, I mean, they don't go into depth about the Incan or Aztec Empire. They just say we're all extinct, we're all gone, and now everyone's like a so-called mestizo, and that's it. They don't talk about the technological advancement. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, man.
Oh, I was just going to say that there's not much coverage on the advancements of like what Native people were able to do, such as I think it was the Aztecs that created number zero, you know, Mayan calendars, and just all the agriculture and so much crop cultivation they were able to do, and would never get any credit for it.
It's really sad. And yeah, a lot of it too is like, when you really think about it, is it because like what, like you tell them but they don't believe it because they see brown as inferior or not valid enough, you know. Not all, but some. That's what I noticed from my work going door to door and telling people. But a lot of people just believe what the subconscious hierarchical power says. You know, like if you're viewed as powerful, like an institution or just some place of learning that is quote unquote prestige, then you are the only one who can have valid information. If you are just a guy on the street, or if you're a guy making YouTube videos, a lot of people just look at you like, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, they tune out. So a lot of it is just making these ideas, the truth known in these places of power, and, you know, devaluing to an extent these places, these institutional places. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I was going to ask you one more thing. Was you've been outside the U.S. like Mexico before?
Yeah,
correct?
I live in a camper. I travel back and forth all the time.
Yeah. How would you say, I mean, the differences between, have you gotten criticism, I think, in Mexico or racism regarding you know, being Native, or any issues you've found, or is it mostly in the US?
I've seen mainly in the US, but over in Mexico, it's just more just headache confusion for most people when I tell them that they're Native. Like either they get it, like, because I talk to, and it's unfortunate, more of the the lighter skinned natives, the ones who are a little bit more mixed with European, because they're able to have that hierarchical power system, colonial power system advantage to go to the universities or whatnot, more easy access to knowledge. They're able to figure out that they are native, or that the people there are just in general native. They know, I've asked a couple of my friends, and they said, yeah, I know, everyone here is native. I'm like, Native American, like, you guys know you're Native American, you're Indigenous. And then she was like, yeah, everyone's Native American here. And we were in Ensenada at the time. This was probably about a month ago. And yeah, she knew. And I'm like, do you want to know more about your identity? And she was just very indifferent. She was like, yeah, sure. Sounds cool. I'm like, that's awesome. Let's do it then.
Yeah. Like the most we come across is like they know, but they're not really like curious. They're not really like, that curiosity is not there unless you mention it, like.
Yeah, there's just no solid fuck given,
Yeah, there's no care.
They just don't care. Like, it's just like, I see that. Yeah, we're native.
I wonder if they would care if they saw this. I showed this to Marcus, like it was like the other day, it was like 2 days ago. There was a news article here that the news stations here in Alabama covered, that the Cherokee Nation was telling, the Jeep manufacturers to stop using Cherokee in the models, as a name in the models of their car. And that's a Cherokee chief that said that. And you had all these people in the comment section, all these people claiming that they were descendants of Cherokees and that they were all Cherokee, and they were like, oh well, I'm Cherokee, or I'm a descendant of Cherokee, and I disagree. That's stupid. And I went and I was like, let me fucking see. And I went and clicked on every single profile, and it was all fucking white people. And so I comment, I'm like, all you people saying you're Cherokee is like, what are you, 5%? Like, you're pathetic. Like, that's like saying you're 5% black and then wanting to say you're black. Like, stop this fucking madness. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, man. Like, I'm 5% black, and I think Black Lives Matter is just ridiculous. That's like saying that.
Yeah, that's like.
Yeah, and like this lady like tried to fight with me. She's like, "Well, you don't know how they were raised," and I was like, "You're right. I don't know how they were raised. However, if they are really Cherokee or a descendant or a proud descendant, they would be agreeing with the chief and falling in line and supporting other people that are way more Native American than they are. They wouldn't be belittling what their tribe is saying."
Like
exactly.
That.
They wouldn't be belittling what they have to say, and they wouldn't be centralizing their own voice.
Yes.
Because it's
especially when your color is like of privilege, right?
Yeah. To a certain extent, I think.
But I wonder if people like in Mexico or a lot of other people that are native, like, know that there is a lot, and I here in the South, I see it all the time. There's a lot of white people that will claim that they are native or claim some sort of Cherokee grandmother or something. And it's like, and yet here we are, we're clearly native, we look the part, and we don't want to claim it. And it's insane.
Yeah, and I don't know if you notice, but do you notice how there's a romanticization?
Yes, I did.
Preference towards kind of like Southwest natives, or like Northern natives in general. But as soon as you start talking about the liberation of a lot of our people who are from the south of the border, it's kind of like, oh yeah, well you guys are just Aztec, but you guys aren't Native American.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's just kind of like they love the Northern natives. Oh my God, we worship them. But then it's like, I mean, some people, not everybody, right? But like, then they're, I agree with you. They talk about Southern natives and they treat us like, oh, like, no, you guys are the cockroach. I don't have anything to do with Southern natives. Fuck that. I don't know. It's just.
Yeah. I feel like they think that there's a type of belief that people south of the border are mixed and people north of the border are not mixed. That's a lot of people's mentality when they say, oh, but you guys are Spanish too. And I'm like, yeah, and they're French and English and they have all this other.
Right. Like, I would say that they're way more mixed than we are. Like, look at their requirements, like 1/16, 1/8 to join a tribe. Like, I'm not crapping on that. I'm just saying they are way more mixed than we are. The highest requiring one and is, I think it's like the UT tribe. It's like 62%. That's the highest tribe here in the States that require that. Like most of them require 25. So it's like, no, they're way more mixed.
Exactly.
It's sheer ignorance.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of northern natives,
Rampant.
you know, they carry the same type of ignorance that a lot of the white people and other foreigners on our continent carry, that
It's the same common belief.
the common belief that, oh yeah, well, they're not really native, you know, they're not really Native Americans. We're the Native Americans. And it's because of this Hollywood glamorization, priority treatment of the northern native that our people aren't really highlighted and seen as valued. And even in like movies like Apocalypto, right, which is very historically inaccurate, we're portrayed as like dirtier, like we can't even, you know, we didn't even bathe ourselves. But you know, when the actuality is that we did bathe ourselves, you know what I'm saying? And it's just,
and we're all like sacrificing everybody.
Exactly. 24/7, when it wasn't as common as a lot of the common belief is, you know. And it's just, you know, and there's like a highlight of like Mayan, Aztec, Mayan, Mexica, but like there's so many different tribes, you know.
Right.
It's like almost as if they focused on the ones that they thought was the most grisly or gruesome,
or they portrayed them in a gruesome way, and like
where they had the most weight to validate the manifest destiny idea, you know, to conquer the land. Okay, well, these two tribes are quote unquote really fucked up, so they deserve, all of them deserve to be conquered when we're all diverse. Just in the Bay Area, the tribes there, the language and culture is as distinct as English and Chinese. Literally, elders would tell you that. Yeah, 3 miles away, we have never really been able to understand what the fuck they've been saying, because it's a different language, you know. To this day, we have no idea what they are talking about, because even though we are close, our cultures are very different. But we were able to maintain peace because so and so, you know. And it's
but only the ones that they portrayed really, like you said, grisly, is like the ones that are highlighted throughout Hollywood and like throughout textbooks.
And this it creates a one-dimensional idea of what Native American is.
It's like shoehorning all as a bad image or something. Yeah.
And we're connected and related to each other just based off of migration, you know. I was in Oaxaca last month.
Oh.
And before that, 3 months prior, I went to Arizona, and I went to the Herd Museum, where we went in there and we saw a bunch of Pueblo designs and bags and whatnot. And I noticed one thing, the connection in Oaxaca, and even a place as far as Arizona. You know, Oaxaca is really, really deep south in Mexico, you know. And the designs, I shit you not, some of the designs, a lot of them, were identical to the ones I saw from the Pueblo.
Crazy.
So you could tell that there's migration, there's trade, there's intermarriages, and all of us are connected, and we're connected by the allele 9. Have you all heard of allele 9?
I have
Oh,
not.
the repeat 9 allele?
Yes.
Yes.
Repeat 9.
I have not, unfortunately.
It connects all of us, you know, all indigenous people of the quote unquote Americas carry that, and that's our unique DNA marker.
Yeah, but even without science, you know, because our history, our oral history says it. You can see it in the designs, you know, and the features too. You know. So you know, what he said, the migration, even like during the wars and all that, the Californian area native tribes, they migrated down south to flee, and then vice versa, the Mexican area native tribes, they fled upward. So we are really all related in this area, all the areas, like everyone was fleeing all over the place. So, you know, you can't really gatekeep and tell us we're only from there, you're only from there, or, you know, this doesn't make any sense.
Like, even if I got a full-blooded quote unquote Dene, Navajo, and I was to say, hey, you're just Dene. If you know your history, of Native people, you would know that a lot of those people also come from the south colonial border. That those people met with other people, mixed, and created Navajo, Hopi, other tribes. And it's just pure ignorance that our people don't know this because of colonization. It's not necessarily completely their fault. It's just our cards we were dealt with.
Yeah.
I was wanting to present this question to you. I wanted to get your take on this. So we had a person, like a hater, on our channel before, right? And he was saying that you can't be Indigenous if you don't come from an Indigenous community and all this other stuff. So I explained to him, I was like, obviously I debated with him a long time, like on multiple videos, because he would always comment on every single video. He's persistent. And so he, like the last time we debated, I was like, dude, like, okay, well, what about people that don't have their tribes were like have gone extinct? They're not there anymore. It's like, I thought the Huachichil was like that. I mean, now we're coming back and we're reforming, right? But I was telling him all that, and he was just hating on it. And he's from an Indigenous community in Mexico, and he's like, well, can a white person go back and bring back the Vikings? And he was just saying stupid shit like that. And I was like, dude, what? Like, that's really callous of you to say. Like,
I've seen the white people do that. The Nordic people, Norwegians, I've seen them literally do that. But I think that more importantly, more relevant to what you just said, that when they say that, they're learning that from, as much as we like to pretend that the pueblos are the center of what all indigeneity is, the reservations, all the center of what all indigeneity is. The reality is that they have deep-rooted colonization themselves, and we can't quite. I hate to say it, but we can't quite rely on their voices solely to decolonize, because, again, you go to Oaxaca, you go to these different communities that are full-blooded Indigenous. They still have their traditions. They still speak their language. Still, what would be there? You see them holding a gigantic cross with a bunch of white angels on them. Why? Because colonization happened. There's still that in their mind, of what Native and what isn't. And a lot of them, again, carry that intergenerational trauma. Like, I just don't want to be erased again. I don't, and that's that trauma in the heart, in their spirit. They've been beaten down for so long that they feel like it's almost an attack when someone is trying to reconnect with their Native roots. And it's really sad, but I think they're, again, re-education. They need to know about these things, the trauma, the pain, the history of who they are and where they come from. And that we and other people like us, quote unquote Mexicans, quote unquote El Salvadorians, quote unquote Peruvians, all these different people, they've been domesticated by our oppressors, the colonizers, to detach from their native ways and native identity, to hate themselves. And even the ones in the pueblos, they face that same colonization. It's just in a different way. They might know who they are, but they might not know that, the ways that it occurred. Again, Jose Vasconcelos, the founder of the idea of mestizaje in Mexico. He was a Nazi propagandist. He made Nazi propaganda. And he used this idea of mestizaje to, again, Latinize the indigenous population. And one of his quotes was something, it's probably going to be a misquote. I can't remember the exact quote on top of my head, but it was like, "We have Latinized all the land. Even the full-blooded Indians don't speak their language anymore, and they have become Latinized. They don't even speak their language, and they don't even identify as being Indigenous." And this was, I have the book, a really good book I recommend y'all, if you haven't already read it, is To Die in This Way, a really great title. The Myth of the Mestizaje. It's written by a white man, but it is very pivotal information. Very pivotal information.
Yeah.
But yeah, again,
Thank you.
Yeah, write that down, Marcus.
I got it.
Good one.
Thanks for that recommendation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
they specifically talk about Nicaragua, but they also reference Mexico and other Latin, quote unquote, Latin countries.
And just to our viewers out there who aren't so familiar with Vasconcelos,
Vasconcelos, yeah.
Vasconcelos, he is the guy in Mexico that was basically in charge of, not in charge, but played a big part in the demographics of Mexico, and pretty much openly he promoted, native ethnic genocide.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, he said pretty much it's not cool to be native, and we're going to be a part of this like mixed race. And he had a lot of Eurocentric values and thoughts.
He himself was actually a white man too.
Yeah, and he was I guess he was Spanish Creole. So he played a huge part in our ethnic demise down south. But thanks to these videos, we are able to reawaken a lot of people. I just wanted to say one thing, and what astounds me more than anything is that you can look at what's it, the BuzzFeed, or there's a lot of socially open, I guess you could say liberal YouTube channels that bring about Native Americans, and a lot of them are extremely white. And I'm talking about North Native Americans connected to tribes. So you can look as white as John Smith, but as long as you're sorry.
Yeah.
Oh.
We've seen.
I see. Yeah, we've definitely seen him.
Yeah, you can look as white as John Smith, but as long as you have a connection to a tribe, you're Native American. But for someone that looks like me or other people south of the border that are way more native, and they want to say that they're Native American, no.
Nope.
Were you gonna say? Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I disagree. I was just.
Oh, thank you. But I think you guys said you saw a video maybe of that, of really, white appearing Native Americans. I said, it looked like John Smith, but because they have that connection to the tribe, but people like us cannot. So it's really insane that we have to jump through so many hoops, are criticized. A lot of DTNs, detribalized natives that don't have their tribes anymore. And we get flack, and not only from non-native people, but also as we call them, well, I won't use that term, but just natives that are still off the path.
Yeah,
it's sad, but oh god, it's stupid.
Yeah, it is.
I've sometimes referenced it to them, to the sunken place. They're in the sunken.
The sunken place from Get Out. Yeah, that's accurate.
Sunken place sounds good.
I'm sure your guests wouldn't like that one either.
Yeah, I to help our people out, I'm gonna get a genealogy video out to help people trace back to Indio ancestors on paper. I mean, it's sad that we that we would have to resort to such methods. It's obvious, looking at everybody here, that you're native, but I always recommend to people, if you can do some genealogy, and that also helps kind of as a shield. You're okay, well, I have the paperwork too, bitch. But it's sad that you have to resort to such methods.
I do understand its use and purposes as a backup if someone is really pressing you, or you just you're having it, and I understand that. But I hope one day we can get to a point where we don't need to pull out the white man's paperwork and be like, hey, look, I'm native.
Yeah.
We can just be like, okay, yep, I see you. You're native. What's up, brother? What's up, sister? What's up, relative? But baby steps. I think it's a great thing. I hope you do make that video. I'll make sure to repost it. Check this out. This is how you do it, y'all.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I found a lot. I found 39 total of Indios, in baptism and marriages total. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so that simplicity you're talking about, I've actually seen some of it though, because in that Cuauhtli community from Mexico that I'm talking about, the founder, he looks like he's straight up 100%. But anyway, him and his buddies have seen me, and they never asked me. They didn't be they never asked me. They're like, oh, show us your paperwork or anything. They just saw me and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're Cuauhtli. You say you're from San Luis Potosí, we believe you. It was just that simple.
Exactly. it's the same way in Mexico. I noticed, like when I went to Mexico and I was reconnecting with my Kumeyaay people, I was expecting like, okay, they're probably gonna ask me for paperwork or something like that, right? Or how do I know I'm Kumeyaay or whatnot? And surprisingly enough, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, you're Kumeyaay, cool, welcome to the family. You know what I'm saying? And I also noticed there's other nations as well. There's not a lot of like questioning. Like it's very, very much an American colonial thing over here to do that.
Yeah.
Interesting differences.
Yes, very much so. And I want to add on to one point. So, the people that are critical of us, like wanting to reclaim Native identity, want to be called Native Americans, they're cool with the John Smith looking natives. No disrespect there. But we can't be Native. And then what do they say? No, you're Hispanic. Hispanic's not a race. Well, then they'll call us like mixed race. We're like, okay, then that means I'm half Native. And they'll be like, no. So so then what are we?
You guys aren't either. You guys are just mestizo.
Yeah, I don't think those.
Respect it.
I don't think they're smart enough to even think of that word.
The ones who do, they say, "Oh, you just mestizo." It's usually the own kind of the Latinx institutionalized Native that's just been, maybe they're part of a club like the Chicano club or something like that. I've actually had a debate because I had a Native American student council of Indigenous Americans, right? Student council of Native Americans, and we had a debate with this group called Mecha de San Pacho. I don't know if you all have heard of that, Mecha. They're like all over the States. They're like a college group of quote-unquote Americans.
I'll write that down.
More popular like the 90s.
Yeah, they're more popular in the 90s. They're like a group they're like a university group in California, mainly, I guess. But yeah, we had a debate with them, and we sent this idea to them, and they were just saying that it was appropriative. They said it was just wrong, and we broke it down and actually won the debate. We beat them of why we should reclaim. And they said, just call yourself mestizo. And then I'm like, why would we call ourselves mestizo when that was a tool of genocide used to erase Native people? And why? And if you don't identify, and then they said, well, I don't identify as Native. I don't think you should identify as Native. And then, well, I'm a Native person, and if you don't identify as Native, what gives you the right to tell other Natives not to identify as Native, right? Yeah. And these are the things. These are some of the things that they were kind of like, oh, well, my grandmother's Aztec though. What? You said you weren't Native. Then why are you telling me how to identify? If and
yeah.
And they were all about, like fighting for people's rights.
Exactly.
But they don't even know who they're fighting for. Like
they don't know where that brown skin even comes from.
Yeah.
And it's like you have Aztec temples.
big old hints everywhere.
Big old Aztec temple posters in your room, in the club room. You have all this brown pride stuff, but as soon as they tell you you're Native, you look at me like I'm a maniac and I'm being appropriative. We'll take out Aztec temple.
You see, that's funny that they say that you're being appropriative just because you're saying that they're Native, you're Native, or that they're Native, like in that situation. Like if they have all these decorations that are Aztec and they're calling themselves mestizo, aren't they being appropriative? It's like you're not even saying you're Native, motherfucker. So why are you grabbing my Aztec stuff?
Took the temple out the door with you.
I didn't notice that until after, because I went. They made peace because we owned them, right? So they said, "Come over, guys. We want to talk to you." And then we all came over, and we went to the belly of the dragon, and we saw all that stuff, and we were just like, "What the fuck?" But the debate was over, so we didn't want to start another war.
What is this? Like,
right.
Sounds like you've had a really interesting adventure, my friend, going against certain people.
Yeah, he's had a lot, man. It's fascinating to hear all about that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting, and again, it's just we just gotta talk to everybody about it,
what we get here a lot in the LA area is just to throw that out there is a lot of people, our people, native people, asking, they look at us and they clearly can see we're native. So they're like really curious and they ask us if we're native. And then we feel like it's kind of like a way for them to open up the discussion that they're confused about them being native. We get that a lot.
Oh yeah, we
here.
just had that at Best Buy 2 days ago.
It happens everywhere there. And this is kind of how it goes. It goes like, oh, are you native? Okay. And then we're like, yes, we are. And then
We're like, are you native?
they clearly look native. So we say,
You look
oh,
native.
are you native too? And then I go, no,
I'm Mexican.
I'm not. And they're like, well, maybe in the generations back, like my family's from Mexico or from Arizona or something.
And then she said this. She said, this happened Best Buy 2 days ago.
Oh my god.
And she was like,
so
probably like generations ago,
daunting.
three or four generations ago, we were indigenous. And then I'm like, oh, okay, huh. So you're not native. What are you? And then she said, well, I'm Mexican. I'm like, huh. Well, Mexican isn't a race. It's a nationality. And then I know my staple line. And she was like, well, I took a DNA test and it came out that I was 52% native. And I'm like, oh, then,
So
and then
you are
Cuauhtli,
native, I told her.
then Cuauhtli said it exactly like that. So you are native.
And then
Right?
she goes,
And
yes, like I guess, or like
Yes,
there's
you
just this. I thought you said you weren't native, but then you passed and it says you're. And you said you're Spanish, but you don't consider the other 50% native. Like that's weird.
exactly, you're willing to identify as a Spaniard, but you won't identify to
It is so confusing here.
the ancestry of the homeland you stand on right now. You know, that's what I always think.
Right.
Like,
And they express the phenotype. They don't look like a Spaniard.
Right. And I was like, that's why
You
we
don't look
asked
like-
you because
exactly.
you look native. So, we asked
And
if you're
she-
native.
and mind you, she had very, very light skin, but still we could tell just looking at her phenotype, her features, it was fucking obvious that she was
There's
native.
just some silliness. going
Obvious. Straight up obvious, you know.
All these stupid comments are hurting my brain.
on everyone.
Gosh, you got a lot of confusion and post-colonialism out there.
Yeah,
Looks like we got a lot of work to do.
they feel like imposters, you know. They, like when they say they're natives, I just feel like I'm not, because
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
grow up like that, you know. I didn't grow up as a native.
Yeah.
Like,
But at least they're asking now. So
yeah.
it's like they're awakening.
Exactly. I like that necklace on you, by the way.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's kumia. It's made out of acorns.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's really, really
I like
badass.
it. Very neat. But oh man, I feel like we could go on for hours. But-
Yeah, but yeah, we probably could, man. But yeah, I think we've like reached close to two, if anything.
Oh,
We'll have to make another video again sometime soon. This is
Oh,
really-
for sure. Have you guys back on the podcast if you'd like to be back. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, anytime.
awesome.
I have a recommendation of someone you should have on.
Sure.
Anthony Vieira Cocha. Sorry, I kind of butchered his last name there. Sorry, Anthony. But his Instagram username is Indigenous Pride.
oh, we were already messaging with him. We want to have him on in the future. Yes.
Yes. We're just about
Yeah, sure. He's a good guy to have on.
very good guy. Thank you for that recommendation. Oh yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
already talking with him. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. We're going in the right direction then.
Oh yeah, we are.
It
Again,
was cool, having a chance to talk about this.
Yeah, very important stuff. I'll make sure to share and do what I can.
thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Definitely, yeah, share this video with us, and we will like on native groups. But yeah, I'm glad we could all learn about each other and realize that we're pretty similar in our views, and there's still a lot of work ahead. So
Definitely.
to those watching that are still on, I think we're like over an hour 30 or 40. Thanks for watching, and we will end this video for now. So I'm going to put that on